Smiling faces on the bus today after Friday's result. But I suppose it's fitting, you know, there's a new era dawn for the club on Friday afternoon, and we'll take you along to Fletcher's Hall today, where dawn broke with the club for the first time back in 1872. So good afternoon everyone, and a warm welcome to the Founders Trail at Ibrox Stadium Tour, which operates in association with Rangers Football Club and Rangers Youth Development. My name is Ian McCall, and also on board to help guide you through today's tour is Gordon, and our driver for the day is Callum. We're not employees or representatives of Rangers Football Club, but just ordinary blue noses from the street who have a wonderful story to share with you today. So this morning we've given you a map detailing our route and pinpointing some of the locations around Glasgow that we'll visit during the course of the tour. We'll also give you a set of handouts, and the handouts are relevant to the locations, and it would be appreciated if you take them with you when we leave the bus at our designated stops. So we'll leave Ibrox shortly and make our way across the city to the east end of Glasgow, where, as I said, we'll visit Fletcher's Hall, the scene of the first Rangers' first ever match in May 1872. We'll also view the plaque that had been placed within Glasgow Green Football Centre in 2009 that marks the birthplace of the Rangers. We'll then make our way through the city centre, pointing out various locations relevant to the Rangers' early years as we go. We'll head across to the leafy west end of the city, where we'll have a 30-minute break at the West of Scotland Cricket Club, the scene of Rangers' first ever Scottish Cup final in 1877. And this will give everyone a chance to unwind and grab a refreshment and a bite to eat. We'll leave Partick and continue our story as we head deeper into the West End, visiting the location of Rangers' second home at Burn Bank, before crossing over the River Clyde to the south side, where we'll visit the site of our ground at Canning Park. We'll then make our way along to Creighton Cemetery, where we'll make our final stop of the day, before heading to Ibrox, where the stadium tour will commence at 3:30. All in, our day should be complete by around 5 p.m. Fletcher's Hall, the scene of Rangers' first ever game versus Calendar in May 1872. It's an incredible step from this public park to Manchester in 2008, when 250,000 people followed the same boys club which was born here to the UEFA Cup final. That's quite a thought, you know, we speak about it often, you know, that acorn that was planted here grows into a club with 250,000 people following them to Manchester for the UEFA Cup final. It's an astonishing thought. Think back to that day, you know, we could have filled Old Trafford in the city of Manchester Stadium, still had 100,000 people out in the street following the club which was born here in this public park. The supporters have been a great voice again this season as they sing about the 4 lads who had a dream, with no money, no kit, not even a ball, and it's the scene here that is being celebrated in such fine chorus. And it's pure Hollywood. A group of kids come into Glasgow from the Scottish countryside, forming this spot what was to become the world's most successful football club. Of course, celebrated actor and director Robert Duvall hauled a full production crew all the way across from America to Glasgow to make a movie shot at Glory, which was a work of total fiction. This of course even included casting our own Alan McCoist in a Celtic strip, when all along he had the greatest sporting story of all within his grasp, and he knew nothing about it. The landscape has certainly changed from 1872 when the Rangers were here. When the Glasgow Underground was built,
in 1891, the earth from the tunnels was actually brought out and deposited here. So when the Rangers had been here 20 years earlier, the pitch that they played on was very much down at river level, which is just beyond the trees there. So this has been built up to where we are today with the earth from the tunnels from the Glasgow Underground. Now with people such as William Dunlop and Sam Ricketts, who are both pictured in 1817 photograph, and author John Allen to thank for the articles that they wrote, which give us a wonderful insight into the early days of the club. And I'll read for you what they wrote. Sam Ricketts wrote in 1884 about the boys playing here in their civvies during the first few games. Journalist John Allen wrote about them having to change behind a bush as there were no facilities. Willie Dunlop wrote in the SFA Handbook of 1881, using the name True Blue, that genial Peter McNeill would travel on a Saturday morning to the desirable part of the Glasgow Green, which was here, set up the noted standards, which were poles, and stand guard until the classic hour came when he would be joined by his friends. Now we felt this was a very dramatic and moving image and commissioned a painting to be done depicting this scene, which is shown in handout number 5. We presented the painting by artist Helen Runciman to David Weir back in 2009, and it now hangs in the marble staircase at Ibrox, and we'll see it later today. What Willie Dunlop was describing was, I said, the boys settled the west end of the city, but teenage Peter McNeill would take it upon himself to travel across the city, which must have been a bit of a daunting task, the Saturday morning, and literally stand guard here at Flesher's Hall to make sure that his friends and teammates is somewhere decent for the club to play in the first few games, and that was the reason we got it put on to canvas. Now Willie Dunlop also wrote about our first ever game here versus Calendar, which ended 0-0. He said, "The first game was a terrible spectacle, with the ball suffering an incredible amount of abuse. We haven't progressed much, eh?" Willie McBeath was given man of the match and then spent a week in bed recovering due to his exertions. He continued, "Thus ended the first match, played at the latter end of May 1872, some 2 months after the inauguration of the club." Now this was a confirmation that we required regarding the debate that raged for years about whether the club had been formed in 1872 or 1873. I read again what he wrote. "Thus ended the first match, played at the latter end of May 1872, some 2 months after the inauguration of the club." Now, the most frustrating aspect about that, of course, is Rangers achieved their greatest ever triumph at the latter end of May 1972. What you'll probably find is Rangers kicked their first ball here, and exactly 100 years later, probably in the same week, Rangers were lifting the Cup Winners' Cup in Barcelona, and the club never celebrated it accordingly. What had happened was John Allen, who was a journalist at the time, was commissioned to write a book, The First 50 Years of the Rangers. The book's actually called The Story of the Rangers. You can still purchase it. John Allen was a year late going to publication and just changed the year of the club's formation from 1872 to 1873 to tie in with his book, which was released in 1923. Now in 1923 there was a dinner held at Ferguson Foresters, which was in Buchanan Street at the time, and it said there was great debate raged at the dinner about the club's year in formation, and that will be the club that's phone going off. Hope we'll go left end back at Ibrox. Excuse me a sec. It's not, no. So there was a dinner held, and it said there was great debate raged about the club's year in formation. Tom Valence was at that dinner, so I think we can guess, who was kick-starting the debate. We also played another game here versus Clyde that season, which Rangers won 11-0, and it was recorded that was a game that they wore the blue jersey for the first time. Now the lads wrote to Queen's Park, who were the top club at the time, asking for a game, as they were desperate to pit their skills against the best, but the request initially was turned down. You see, in the early years of football, Queen's Park would tour the country, giving exhibition matches and how the game of football should be played. Now whether it was due to lack of finance or what, we're not sure, but Queen's Park never ever reached the area down in the borders at Selkirk, Jedburgh and Hoyt, and we reckon that's the reason why rugby is still a prominent sport in that area of the country. Now, as I said earlier, the founder, William McBeath, was actually from Calendar. We believe it would have been Willie who'd approached the expats from the town who settled in Glasgow, and that probably helped organise the opposition for that first match. It's also recorded back in 1872, Queen's Park were playing in the Hampden area of the city, and it said that many people on their way to support them would walk through the Flesher's Hall here, across Palmadine Bridge, and make their way up across. And there were small reports saying that the style of play that Rangers adopted, and a crowd started to gather. I think they were moving the ball about very quickly, which hadn't been seen before. Full of energy, young kids, and the crowd started to gather just here on the pathway. There's also the famous story of the Rangers' first ball. Now, older brother of Moses, Willie McNeill, was gifted the ball by John MacDonald, the man who employed his father at Belmore House, which is now part of the Faslane Naval Base, but we'll speak about that when we get back on the bus. A recently discovered profile on Willie McBeath from 1884 details that Willie McNeil wouldn't hand over the ball for our first few matches until payment was made, and payment which Willie McBeath produced. He then wanted to pick his own position within the team, and you can almost hear him uttering that immortal line, "Well, if I'm not playing, neither's my ball." So Willie McNeil was literally standing there saying, "I'll let you play my ball, but I'm wanting payment first," and Willie McBeath produced that payment. Now Mr Struth has, and rightly so, been credited with moulding the Rangers into what we recognise today as Scotland's premier club. He was a strict disciplinarian who's also credited with installing many of the traits that made ordinary men into Rangers men. However, these foundations were laid back here in 1872 by men such as Tom Valens and the McNeil brothers. I'll read again from their friend and teammate Wally Dunlop's article. He said, "They would practice 6 nights a week, often under moonlight, to achieve their goal in Grail." He then went on to say that the founders found great frustration in the observance of the Sabbath, or they would have practiced here 7 days a week. They were wanting to be the best immediately. They didn't want to wait, they wanted to take on Queen's Park, and that was the Rangers' philosophy being born. You see, back in the early years of football, both competing teams would put forward an individual to act as umpire. This was before referees had actually come into the game. Now, on one such occasion at a match at Dumbarton, Tom Valens' teammates actually approached him and asked him to step down from the role as he felt he'd be too honest. Tom stepped down alright. He resigned from the club on the spot because not only was the club's integrity, but his own integrity was being brought into question, and that was the foundation blocks getting put into place. Listen to what Mr Struth said during his famous speech. "No matter the days of anxiety that come our way, we shall emerge stronger because of the trials to be overcome." And that has been the philosophy of the Rangers since the days of the gallant pioneers. The very foundations our club is built upon, that hard work, discipline, honesty, integrity, as I said, and fair play, were laid here by our founders. There was also the plaque unveiled in the Glasgow Football Centre in September 2009 by Heather Lang, the actual granddaughter of our founder Peter McNeil. And handout number 6 shows that very event. Now, unfortunately, Heather just passed away last month at her sister's house in London, but that's the actual granddaughter of our founder Peter McNeil. You'll also see the map at the top of the handout there. That's the bridge on the right hand side that we just crossed over there with the bus, and it's shown Flesher's Haugh and the playing field been down here behind us. So that's Flesher's Haugh, folks, where the very first game was played. And what we'll do now, we'll turn these about, we'll take you across to the football centre, and we'll take you in there to show you the plaque that was unveiled by Heather in 2009. Thanks very much. Her head was a boy stepping from the river onto the football field with her ball in the hand for the first time. So we approached sculptor Andy Scott, and of course done the John Gregg statue, or the memorial statue at Ibrox, and Mr Struth's bust within the stadium. Andy very kindly put it down in paper for us. We then went and raised funds through the worldwide range of support on the internet, and we've got a plaque manufacturer in Glasgow, and this has been the result of it. It was unveiled, as said, in September 2009 by the actual granddaughter of our founder Peter McNeil, Heather Lang, and the event was also attended by David Mason, the club historian, and Sandy Jarvin. So it was a wonderful event. We were told it wouldn't last down here a week, but that's been September 2009, and we're absolutely delighted with it. There's dozens of kids, if not hundreds, use this facility every week, you know, and if it gives inspiration to even just one, then as far as we're concerned, it's job done. Because that's essentially what it was. It was a group of kids out there who wanted to form their own wee football team. Here's what wanted to become the world's most successful. Please feel free to take photographs of it though. When they make it does act like kind of a mirror image. You end up with a good photograph of yourself, you know, rather than the plaque. You try and take it from an angle, you know. We've tried it with the lights off, the lights on, and so good luck with that. There's ladies' toilet facilities upstairs. Okay folks, welcome to Hamilton Crescent, the home of Western Scotland Cricket Club, and the team of Rangers' first ever Scottish Cup final was set against fear of leaving in 1877. People often say, why wasn't it played up at First Hampden? Well, back in 1862, the cricket club's patron was a famous Glasgow tobacco merchant named David Cannon, and it was his patronage which enabled Western Scotland to build the pavilion and to close the ground with iron fencing, thus making Hamilton Crescent the most advanced sporting arena in the Glasgow area at the time. Now, the first match was played on the 17th of March and ended in a 1-1 draw, the Rangers goal coming via a Bale own goal. A crowd of over 8,000 attended that day, which was incredible at the time to see this team of youngsters take on the mighty Bale. And it said that the draw saw the young Rangers team carried off shoulder high by the crowd. It was said that the Vale were mightier in every sense of the word, including the size of their players, and literally men against boys. Now, the replay took place a month later, the 7th of April 1877. Willingdon Lock scored in normal time for the Rangers, only for Vale to equalise. That game also ended 1-1, but then roared into extra time. Willingdon Lock scored again, and up went the roar from the Rangers fans of goal, and the cup is surely ours. But the ball, incredibly, was in the arms of the Vale goalkeeper. The umpires were consulted, but no goal was the verdict passed. Glasgow Professor of Surgery George P. MacLeod was standing behind the goal at the far end of the park and was prepared to take an oath and vow that the ball had actually went through the goal, struck him in the head and landed back in the goalkeeper's arms. But the goal never stood, and this led to the supporters of both sides invaded the playing field. Bedlam ensued and the match was duly abandoned. It said the Glasgow air was full of umbrellas and bowler hats. Of course, the moral of the story being that the Rangers have been cheated by referees for 10 years before Celtic even came in to skiing. The Scottish Cup of 1877 was eventually decided at First Hampden, with Vale winning 3-2. Peter Campbell and Willie McNeil scored for the Rangers. That series of games saw the transformation of the Rangers from what was essentially a boys' club into a respected football club, one which caught the imagination and admiration of the Glasgow working classes. And this is something the club has never lost. The Rangers were never to look back after that series of cup finals. It's also one of the best kept secrets in world football, this arena. The world's first international football match played between Scotland and England was played in this ground on St Andrew's Day, the 30th of November 1872. And all we've got to show for it is a small plaque up in the wall there. But what has been said, if the game had been reversed, it had been played in London, the English FA would have had a museum in this spot. And this is all we've got. The city sightseeing bus that just stepped off, their tours leave every 15 minutes to Ross Square and take a right turn up Ryan Road. Miss this out completely. It's absolute shocking. Moses McNeil became the first Rangers player to be captain of Scotland here when the beat Wales 4-0 on the 25th of March 1876. Andy Gorham and manager Scott Simon both played cricket here, and for Scotland against Australia. Well, there was a Hibs player. The gentleman said to me the way we were walking up here, it was also used for training purposes by Rangers long before Rock and Howie was built, in particular during Rangers' charge for 9 in a row. So it's nice to think, you the McNeil's balances playing here, and 120 years later, the same ground has been graced to people such as Alan McCoy, Gascoigne and Liver. So that's the West of Scotland Cricket Club, folks. Whether that series of games has changed the course of the club's history. And just remember upstairs, through the door there, there's refreshments, there should be a big team for you. Okay, thanks very much. See, the numbered 500 is it was Alexander McNeil who purchased that plot for his wife and his family. Plot 501 is the founder Peter McNeil, his brother William, who's the guy who plays the saw with the ball, and their parents, John McNeil and Jane Loudon Bain McNeil. Plot 502 is James McNeil, the grandfather of Elizabeth Perry, and their son and daughter. When the plots were found in 2008, it was only Alexander McNeil's one that was standing. There was nothing here at all. The McNeil family crown was lying down in the grass, and Alex Struth, who we spoke about up at Lamb Hill, who done the work on Mr Gowdy's grave, he was working here at the time with his brother, and they took the stone down to the office and brushed it off and placed it back. It was Peter McNeil's medical records when he was taken to Hawkhead Asylum when he passed away that showed that he was buried at Craigton Cemetery, and it was Alec and his brother who went through the records for us and pointed exactly where they gave us the plot numbers and took us up here, and this is what we found. We found that there was one on the left hand side, there was nothing on the other two plots. When we discovered Elizabeth Perry, we sat and helped her with the family tree and managed to take it straight down to the present day, and incredibly, literally, she was the only one that was left standing. That then let us take her to Glasgow City Council. We've got the title deeds for the two graves, and the title deeds is showing that her father and grandfather, James McNeil, had purchased the two plots for himself and for Peter. So that then lets us get the title deeds, and we've got the costing done with the monumental sculptor. We consulted with both families about the inscription that would be on the stones, and we then went to the club and asked for their financial assistance, and I'm glad to say they did at the time. I won't hide the fact that Charles Green was saying yes to absolutely everything at the time, and we got in there and got the stones done, because the founder of the club, we felt it was vitally important that there was something here, or somewhere that any support could actually come and visit. The families have came and paid their respects at the stones, and they're as thrilled as we are. It was the end of the line for Peter McNeil, but there's a nice twist to his story. Peter passed away, they said, in 1901, it shows her his stone there. The club moved into their current location at Ibrox in 1899. Now, just turn about, you can actually stand in Peter McNeil's final resting place, look right onto the front door of Ibrox Stadium, and that was no accident. You get a better indication, Mr Struth, exactly the same. You get a better indication of what the Mr Struth final resting place looks straight onto the front door. Goodness knows what's been through their minds the last 3 years, but it is a nice touch. The area here at Craigton Cemetery, the kind of newer part down beside where the crematorium, this is speaking to the guys that work here, it's tended kind of more often than the older part, we call it, up here. You can come along here during July, and sometimes it's ankle if not knee high grass. We come down ourselves and tidy up this area whenever we can, but it's certainly within their job description to cut this back once a year, and they've just done it recently, so that's the reason the grass is kind of down at a kind of low level. If any of my fellow blue noses have the green fingers, I mean, honestly, please feel free to come along if you want to tidy it up, because we come down once a month and give it a brush and cut back the grass. So what I've done today is we started at Ibrox, when the story started at Fleshers Hall. We're taking around about Glasgow, telling the founder's story, and unfortunately this was the end of the line for our founder Peter McNeil, but he did live long enough to see that club, that boys club in Fleshers Hall, grow into the stadium here. So that's the plots for our founder and his brothers. So we'll take you up the hill now to Mr Struth's final resting place, which is just a couple of folks. Okay, once again, watch your feet. Greatest ever manager, Mr William Struth. Once again, the view onto Ibrox Stadium is right in line with his final resting place, and it's touches like that that do make us different from any other club Mr William Struth was manager of Rangers from 1920 to 1954. He was born in Edinburgh, although he spent his formative years in Milnerthorpe. He was a renowned disciplinarian, insisting that the players wore collar and tie and hat, even to training. When his players socialised, Mr Struth demanded that they sat in the best seats in the city's theatres, as they were Rangers players and very much respected in society. During his 34-year reign, Mr Struth won an incredible 18 league championships, 10 Scottish Cups and 2 League Cups, 7 wartime championships, 19 Glasgow Cups and 17 Glasgow Merchant Cups. There's always an annual debate, seems to be in British football, who was the greatest ever manager, and Mr Struth's name doesn't seem to appear as often as it could or should, and that Hall of Honours there bears testament to his achievements. Incredible. He died on the 21st September 1956, aged 81. A couple of years ago, a guy by the name of Graham Mackay took the Founders Tour with us, and Mr Struth's stone was in exactly the same condition as this one here, just to the right of it. Graham informed us that his brother Ian had experience in the field at doing lettering on the actual stone, but he came along, redid the lettering. We also informed the club about it, and Sandy Jardine took Graham, Ian and his father into Ibrox, and they spent a day in the members' suite and in the director's box. Since then, the Sons of Struth group, who helped over the last few months with the goings on at the club, decided to do something with Mr Struth's stone. There was a gentleman by the name, just recently, of Craig McIndoe. He's actually a stone mason, and he volunteered again to come up and do his work free of charge, and spent a weekend here. We got Graham Mackay's brother Ian along, and he redid the lettering, and that's the way the Mr Struth stone has come out. That's the first I've seen it since the work we completed on it, and honestly it looks exactly the same as that. The work these guys done is absolutely incredible. There was a kind of Struth, there was the Struth name at the bottom there, that was, I believe that was in brass at one point, but somebody's helped itself to many years ago, you know, certainly long before we started any of these tours. So that takes it cemetery, folks. Mr Struth's final resting place and the final resting place of our founder Peter McNeill. As I said, you've got to remember back in 1956 and certainly 1901 that none of the trees here in front of us, they wouldn't have been there, or they'd have certainly been half the size. So the view from both of these resting places right onto the front door of Ibrox is very poignant indeed. So once again, please feel free to take your photographs. Thanks very much.
Alright, I can see you now.
And the winter months actually it gets so in the summer months it gets a bit difficult to leave the trees. You still see it, but it's